This workshop is on Taming Your Web Project Requirement Overview. We're just going to touch base on everything that's required. Believe it or not, students think that they've hit on every one of these required components that are required to not lose points on your project. Unless you go through and check the checklist, there's a good chance that you might miss something. And I hate for that to happen because I don't want you to lose points on any of the required elements, required components. All right, first and foremost, HTML5 semantic structure. What does that mean? That means that in HTML5, we have semantic elements that the browser understands, that people accessing who are using assistive technology understand that the hierarchy of your content has meaning. Prior to this, we just used divs, and the comparison I make is that that's like paper bags. You know something's in there, but you don't know what. HTML5 semantic structure, both for the browser and for everybody, is like a Ziploc clear bag. Not only do you know that there's something there, you have an idea what it is just from the way that the page is structured. And think about setting up your page the same way you would think about creating an outline. Does that mean you can't use divs at all? No, but that means use divs only when necessary. For example, as a generic holder or container, or when there's not an HTML5 element that serves the same purpose. Now, on the right of this screen, you see some, you're not required to have all of these elements, but these are the elements, I want to see some of these. These are the basic HTML5 semantic elements. It's not all of them, but I want to be able to see this in your structure so that you're demonstrating you have an understanding of the basic foundation of HTML5 semantic structure. And along with this, this includes good old faithful HTML elements like headings. They need to be nested properly. And that means in order, list, both ordered and unordered lists. And you want your content, if you have a body of text, you don't just want it strangling out there. You want to put it inside paragraph tags so that all of your content is given some sort of purpose. And whether you do that with semantic structure, if there's a semantic element that represents it well, or if, for example, like I generally put all my content when I'm demonstrating these simple sites inside a div container. That all it is a holder, and that's a perfectly appropriate use for that. So this assignment does not require any type of bootstrap, any type of media query. You won't get additional credit for that. Hopefully you're using percents and M's or rems instead of fixed pixels, but that's not even required as long as there's no horizontal scrolling. Having your page mobile friendly is out of the scope of this assignment. So we won't be covering it in this lecture. Okay, you have to have 5 pages. Simple, appropriate, and consistent working internal navigation throughout. That's critical. If the navigation doesn't work, you're going to lose points there. Each page should include a unique title. Nothing says tack you faster than untitled page when your user opens or your visitor opens a browser. So you want to make sure each page has a unique title. I generally do it putting the name of that page, for example, about us, and then a space and a pipe, which is the uppercase right above the enter key, usually on most computers, or the return enter key on a Mac. And then the name of the site. So for example, I might put about us, pipe, vicious cycles. And not only does that tell the user where they are, it's also a good way to enhance your search engine optimization. So that's really important. Title pages, if you don't have a correct title on every page, you will lose points for that. So go back and make sure. Okay, images. There's several different kinds of images that you're going to be required to have. Let me briefly talk a little bit about each one. Your logo needs to be consistently placed across the site. In some cases, you may have it a little different on the landing page than the other pages, but for brand identity, you want to make sure that the logo is consistently placed across the site so that the visitor knows where they are and immediately identifies with your company. As I said, it might look a little different on the landing page. That's fine, as long as it's consistent. Some of you used the provided logo. Some of you created their own. That's exactly A-okay. Social media. You want to use 2 social media icons. Don't care which one. Facebook and Twitter are the most popular, but you can use whatever you want. If you prefer to use LinkedIn and something else, then that's absolutely fine too. But each one of those icon images, and when you search for your social media icons, make sure you get smaller icon size, because there are a lot of them out there that are huge. And remember, even if you change the numbers in Dreamweaver to 50 pixels by 50 pixels, if you used a 2000 picture by 2000 pixel by 2000 pixel image, that's still what has to load for your image to show. So when you look for these, search for icons and then go to the advanced search and look for small sizes. If we have time, I'll show you how to do that in case anybody needs that. Then you need at least two other images on your site, related images that are free to use. And again, if you don't know how to do the free to use, in the advanced search in Google, every browser has it, but I use Google. In the advanced search, you're going to go into the license and make sure you click on for reuse, and then it'll only show you the images that are shared for the purpose that we need them. You can't just go download any image. You need to be able to tell where you got it and prove that it's doesn't have copyright preventing you from using it. Yes, this is an educational environment. Yes, there are a certain amount of things that technically we can use, but we want to establish a habit of only using images that are appropriate to use. Okay, somewhere in this is one of the things that people leave out the most. You have to create an ordered or unordered list used appropriately, and your nav does not count. Your secondary nav does not count for this. What might count is a list of all of your merchandise, a list of when you're going to offer workshops, a schedule of upcoming bicycle events. Those are lists. And remember, these elements, the home page has to be a pretty finished page, but granted, you don't have enough content to totally fill up 5 pages. So it's fine if you use some lorem ipsum or some type of dummy text. There's a lot out there to fill up areas on your page. Your list doesn't have to be on the home page. It just has to be somewhere on the site in an appropriate place. Can put it on your home landing page, but it doesn't have to be. Just remember, bulleted list, all of the items are of equal importance. An ordered list, either time-wise or value-wise or something-wise, they go in some sort of order. For example, if you're listing the winners of a motocross, then if you're listing the participants of a motocross, then let me just, excuse me just a second. I'm going to make sure the student that just came got in. And I think so. I clicked admit, so he should be joining us. Okay, sorry about that. Just remember, you have to use it appropriately. If it's something, if you're just listing all your items that you're selling, you wouldn't want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, unless there was a purpose to putting them in order, unless you were showing these are the 7 items that are on sale. And still, if one is not of more value than the other, as far as importance or some type of value, even if it's like monetary value, you probably use an unordered list. So make sure you not only use a list, but use it correctly. I'm going to scroll this down so I can see. Okay. Okay, links. All of your links must work. Links must be properly formed, and links must contain the appropriate alternative text if necessary. Let me explain. There are three main kind of links you're going to have on your site in this assignment. Your navigation links, and of course they all have to work. Your social media links, and not only do they have to link just to the landing page of Facebook or the landing page of Twitter, they don't have to do anything more elaborate than that, and I don't expect them to. But it's an image that you can click on it and it will take you to that page. So because it's a picture of some type of text, even if it's just the icon initial, in your alternative text, it would be appropriate to say Facebook icon, Twitter icon, whatever that is. Make sure not to leave that out. If you leave out the alternative text, you will be penalized for that. So be very careful that you're using the alternative text across the board. A properly formed hyperlink, what is that? You're going to link out to two external sites. For example, one that we always did when we had a lawn service as one of our projects is everybody always linked to the North Carolina State Arboretum. Okay, that's related to taking care of your lawn because it talks about flowers and trees and shrubs and troubleshooting, all kinds of things. But you wouldn't just give the URL, http:// whatever that was, because that doesn't have any meaning. And you wouldn't say click here, because if someone was accessing that with assistive technology, they'd ask for a list of links, and all they'd see is click here, click here, click here. That has no meaning. Also, don't forget that a search engine accesses content on the web exactly like somebody using assistive technology. So the more accessible your content is, and this is a perfect example, the better you're going to do in search engine optimization. So not only is accessibility the right thing to do, it's also smart from a search engine perspective. So for example, if you were linking to the WRAL Weather Radar website, your link might be WRAL Weather Radar, and you don't have to put parentheses, opens in a new window. You can, but you do want it to open in a new window, which the option there would be the _blank. So that opens in a new window or tab, depending on how the user has their browser set up. That's critical. You're going to lose points if your links don't make sense removed from the article. What's hot has to make sense. By hot, I mean clickable, has to make sense independent of the rest of the page. So don't forget to do that. That's another thing people lose a lot of points on. They either forget the external links entirely, or they don't make them properly formed hyperlinks. Be sure to check your navigation, every little link throughout your whole page. And this site is small enough to go ahead and do it manually, but I'll try to get to showing you how to have Dreamweaver help you test that too. Dreamweaver can help with that, but you want to make sure once you upload, you test again, because that's where you might catch, if you have some file management issues you didn't realize, that's where you might catch it, because links that worked on your local computer are not going to work upload if you have any file management issue. Okay, moving along now. Let me see. I'm just going to go finish this up, and then we'll do the demos after that. This is the last thing in this part. Okay, footer. That includes copyright and email link. Don't make these two things harder than they are. They're really easy. I'm going to show you under the insert drop-down box. You're going to go to insert, HTML, symbols, copyright for the little copyright symbol. And there are two different insert options that you can use. The one from the menu is going to get you to copyright more directly, and you may even know, you can look up what the code is for that, but it's just really easy to go to insert, HTML, scroll down to the bottom to symbols, and then just click copyright. Same basic process with the email link. Put your cursor where you want your email link to be. And what that means, it's going to open a page. When you do this correctly, if the user has a email set up on their computer, it's going to open a page that has an email, and your address is already going to be in the to part of the email. So to go to that, You can type something, but you don't have to. Just go ahead and click where you want to put that email link, and then again, go to insert, and then HTML, and they move where it is, and I think it's about 2/3 of the way down the page. You'll see email link. You click on that, it'll open up in one place. You're going to type your email address, and you can make up something, viciouscircles@gmail.com, or make up whatever you want. I would suggest you not using your own. Just make something up there. And then you want a nicely formed link, like email us at Vicious Cycles for more information. So, or just email Vicious Cycles, whatever. That's how to do those two. Don't make that harder than it is, because that's easy peasy. Again, the copyright link is something people lose points over, these guys. It's in the footer. Doesn't have to be on every page. I recommend you put it on every page, but it has to be on at least one page. Both of these things in the footer. Okay, moving on. Now I'm going to just briefly touch on these, and I have some examples that we can share at the end of this if we have time. But remember, 50% is what we just talked about. So get all of those right, and without even looking at anything else, you've got at least a 50. So it's all uphill from there. Make sure you have all of those required elements. Use that checklist that I provided in the chat and take a minute. You think you've got all of them, but I've seen too many times when folks think they have them all but accidentally leave something out. Please print out that checklist and go through and check everything, because I don't want to take points out for something that you just carelessly kind of accidentally forgot to link the Facebook and Twitter icons to the pages. Then you lose points for that, and that's a real shame. Okay? So then 20% of your grade is going to be page layout. This is really important. No horizontal scrolling. That means this happens if you use fixed pixel width that's too wide. Like if you try to do fixed pixel width and your website fills the entire page, you can't avoid that horizontal scrolling unless you have a huge screen. So I would suggest that if you've got this problem right now, there are a couple of solutions for it. We'll see who has that problem before we address it right now. But that's one thing we'll touch on when I start doing the demos. Graphics do not significantly slow page rendering. You learn this the hard way. If you take a picture you just love with your phone, upload it to your computer, stick it into your website images folder, or loose, however you have your folder structured, and then put it on your page, and then use the little numbers in Dreamweaver to make it exactly the size you want. Yeah, it looks great and it fits perfectly, but that's probably a really huge image, and that whole huge image has to load before you're going to be able to see that picture. So you want to make sure, even if you're not a master yet on creating images for the web, you want to make sure that you don't have huge pictures that are going to really slow the loading of your page. For the most part, most people have high-speed internet, especially this day and age with fiber, Google Fiber, and the things that are in Holly Springs. But your instructor lives out in the country and has slow internet. So if your graphics are huge, they're going to significantly slow page rendering when your instructor is grading your paper, and that could be detrimental. So do keep that in mind. If you have any situations with that, you can touch base with me. If you're familiar with Photoshop, there's an auto feature to save something to a ping that'll prompt you to optimize it to a certain extent. But if you're really stuck on that one, or if you don't have Photoshop, GIMP is an open source replacement, or one of the tools that comes with Windows. Ask me about that. You don't want an image that doesn't look good, but you don't want one that takes forever to load either. So there is a happy medium. I say this 4 times, I think, in this lecture. All navigation and site links must work, because that's one of the most common problems that I see. Everything works when you're previewing it locally, but if you've got the slightest little faux pas in your file management when you upload it to the server, links break, and that can be problematic. So you want to make sure links work not just when you preview it locally, but after you upload it, when you type in your index page URL, you want to make sure that you click through all your navigation and make sure you don't have a problem there. It's not too late to fix something if you do, and if you don't see it. I've been troubleshooting this for a long time, long before I started teaching this class in the ILC, and I've yet to meet a file path I couldn't figure out how to straighten up. So don't panic if you have a little bit of a mess there, because there are a few things that it probably is, and they're all fixable. Do check that. You don't want me to be the one that discovers that problem when I'm going to grade your site. Okay, navigation area. Main navigation links are clearly and consistently labeled consistent navigation area. What that means is you can have navigation at the top of the page and at the bottom of the page, but you can't have it in one place on one page, another place on another page, another place on another page. You want to be very consistent about where your navigation is located throughout your site. There can be some minor variations if you're doing something special with the landing page. If you've got some kind of a carousel or something, not required, no extra points for that, but a lot of people did it. So if you've got something going on, your landing page navigation might be slightly different, but it should still be similar enough to be familiar when the user goes to other pages. So this is really important. And where some things in these, some of these can be a little bit ambiguous, navigation is critical, and it's pretty cut and dry, it needs to be consistent throughout, and the names of your navigation need to make sense with regard to what your site layout is. Content. Consistent site header logo. Informative page title that includes the company, organization, site name. It's like I talked about before. You might put about us, pipe, vicious cycles in your title of the page. That tells both the person viewing your page exactly where they are in the business. If you just had about us, that would be meaningful to the person that was on your site, but it really doesn't help your SEO at all. If you put the pipe and then your site name, not only is that even clearer, that also benefits your search engine optimization. Repetitive information, header, logo, and navigation takes up no more than 1/4 to 1/3 of the top portion of the browser window. Don't panic if you did add some sort of image carousel or something to the top of your landing page. That's not what this means. This means the stuff that's consistent on every single page. You don't want to have all of that being everything that's above the fold being exactly the same on every page. That's all that means. And a fourth, I don't measure that. 1/4 to 1/3-ish. If it looks good, you can vary with that as you would like. Homepage has compelling, interesting information above the fold. Remember, who, what, where, why, how, maybe not all of them, but you've got 3 to 5 seconds to get my interest and keep me there. On your landing page, you must have something above the fold that grabs me. You will lose points here if you don't have that. Okay, so make sure it's not just an image and I have no idea who you are, or I might see vicious cycles in a bicycle. I need some sort of blurb somewhere that I can see that gives me an understanding of what I need to know to want to stay on that site. So be very careful with that one. I see a lot of slick sites that just have vicious cycles and then a picture of a cycle, but that really doesn't tell me anything. I don't know what you do. So I need to know more about you when I hit that main landing page. Okay, page design. 20% of your project grade happens here. This is where good use of basic design principles. I'm not going to take the time to go through all of this stuff. I'm not going to take the time to go through all of this stuff, but you can refer to this content in your web design introductory. Has some great examples. I'm going to provide some images that I just pulled out of the PowerPoints throughout that we probably won't have time to show them all here, but I'll make them available in a folder at the end of this lesson so you can look through them and it gives you some example. You can also go to, and please excuse my language because this is the name of the website, Web Pages That Suck also shows you some really bad examples. It's been out there for a lot of years, and I don't know how recently they've updated it, but that gives you a good example of do this, not this. So take a look at that to get an idea of bad examples. And then Smashing Magazine and a couple of the other main magazines usually do a best of for the year. Go back a couple years and just sort of take a glance at those and sort of compare them to the basic layout that you have. Remember, simple is better for this particular assignment. The most important thing is to have all the components. So design, all this is really important. After you make sure you have all the components, then you're going to consider these things. Balance of text, graphic, white space on a page, on a website, less is always more. If you can't decide if you have too much content, you have too much content. Take some off. White space is always good. Consistent color scheme is appropriate for content and message. It should be really obvious to me what your color scheme is. I shouldn't have to say, I wonder what are the other colors that they're using, or there be different color schemes on different pages. The color scheme should be consistent throughout. That's part of the branding. Font choices are appropriate. That's hard to do starting out. So you want to make sure, take a look at some of the websites that are font pairings. Look for the newer entries done by some of the magazines. Again, Smashing Magazine always does a great one. And there are a couple of other font websites that suggest font pairings. Does that mean you can't pick your own? No, of course not. You can pick your own too if you've got a good feel about it. Go ahead and do that. But you want to make sure that it's obvious to me that you have chosen fonts to reflect your message, not just use the default fonts that are available, or I'm not sure if you use the default fonts. It should be obvious to me that you've carefully selected those fonts. Okay, and then, oops. Practical. The site is appealing to target audience. It has to look good. Doesn't have to look fancy, doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be elaborate. It just needs to be pleasing and appropriate for the target audience. It can be very, very simple with all the elements that works is way better than fancy with all kinds of bells and whistles, missing elements. Compare yourself to what you did yesterday, not to what the person sitting next to you is doing. I say that all the time. Every graphic you use should serve a clear purpose. So don't just pull in stuff because you need 2 more images. Make sure that the images you select are really good reflections of your message. That's critical when you're actually doing this in the real world. Okay, accessibility. Super important. Remember, as I said before, search engines access the internet exactly like someone using assistive technology, exactly like a blind person. So not only is considering accessibility the right thing to do, of course it is, it's also the smart thing to do because it improves your search engine optimization. I don't think there's any argument not to do it, but you've got to do it from the beginning. Doing it retroactively is a pain in the neck. Doing it from the ground up is not. Okay, off that soapbox. All images and graphics have appropriate alternative text. You want to replace with words what you are trying to convey with that image. It doesn't necessarily describe the image. It replaces with words what you're trying to say with that image. For example, you have a great picture of a guy riding through a mountain trail on a bicycle, beautiful mountains, snow-capped mountains in the background. Well, you could say, man riding bike with snow-capped mountains. That's not true, but what you're conveying with that image is that Vicious Cycles offers you a new freedom to explore. Okay, that's a lot more conveying with words what you were trying to convey with that visual. So make sure you keep that in mind. I already talked about hyperlinks are meaningful, no click here. Click here has no meaning to somebody that's accessing a links list. It also has no meaning to a search engine, or less meaning to a search engine. Appropriate contrast, color contrast between text and background. There's several sites where you can go to test this because it's a very specific formula. What I say is stand up from your computer, squint your eyes and step back And if you can't see the text on the background, you probably need to make your dark darker and your light lighter. And generally that's all it takes. It doesn't really usually mean changing colors at all. It just means if you've got white on a gray background, make the gray a darker gray and maybe outline the white with black, or you do something. But you want to make sure. I have old lady eyes, so I'm a great, I take my glasses off, and if I can't see, it could be a lovely picture, but if I have trouble reading what that text says, as soon as I land on the page, I'm going to be subliminally frustrated because I can't see it. So remember that if you've got eagle eyes, the majority of the people viewing web pages probably don't, some to more degrees than others. But you want to make sure you have appropriate color contrast between the text and the background. Okay, so that goes through all the items on the checkpoint.